My musical mentors were Alain Boublil and Claude-Michel Schönberg, known for their musicals Les Miserables, Miss Saigon, Guerre, and The Pirate Queen. Their musicals are story-driven and emotionally intense, featuring individual characters in moments of crisis and set against large historical events. For example, Miss Saigon is truly about the relationship between the main character Kim, her lover Chris, and her son Tam. But the events of the Vietnamese War and the failure of the American troops drive the musical forward. The musical style is sung through, which means the entire musical is sung instead of having standalone songs, which goes back to the style of opera. In opera, there's two types of songs. There's recitative and there's arias. Arias are the big showstoppers that in musical theater evolved into the big songs, while recitative is the dialogue that's just kind of sung, and that was mostly turned into dialogue, but in Boublil and Schönberg's work, they kept the recitative and made the entire musical sung through. To make the musical seem more serious while keeping it a musical, because sometimes you're like, why did they randomly break into song? If you have the musical as a song the entire time, then audiences are more likely to believe that this is just a world where everybody sings. All of their musicals have some theme of identity in them, which according to Schönberg was not intentional, but goes back to their national identity. As French Jewish kids, they grew up in a French town far from the main bustling city of Paris due to their families still grappling with what happened during World War II. But eventually, they both went to college in Paris, and after college, they worked at a recording company. They worked at two separate recording companies, with Alain working in the publishing department of one, and Claude-Michel producing records in a different one. At their respective recording companies, they both published their own songs that they wrote and composed themselves. One day, Alain heard Claude's song on the radio and wanted to publish it, so he went to meet him in person, and they bonded over West Side Story, which just came out around that time, and they both fell in love with it. They were also inspired by Jesus Christ Superstar. Eventually, they started writing a French Revolution concept album together, which became a hit over the radio, and they put it on in a stadium. In France at that time, there was no true musical theater culture, so these two were really paving the way and figuring out their own style. After they published Les Miserables, 2 years later, they met Cameron McIntosh, a longtime producer, who wanted to put on a version in America. They both write the books, and they don't start the lyrics or the music till they have a single vision that they can work from. One of their number one rules is that they must be moved, emotionally, passionately, living the deep fibers of human feeling. And their subject must be challenging and risky. On their first draft, they use no technique, they just want to get it out. But later, they add technique, balance, a beginning, and an end. They write several drafts and a synopsis that details the main songs, the emotions, and the reprises. They write the script chronologically. As I said, a key theme in their musicals is personal identity. Historical events are the action that drives the individual emotional journey, and they focus on a strong emotional and human perspective, on lives shaped by difficult circumstances. One of the common points between their three shows is redemption. Their stories are more action-driven than character-driven, but they have to have a logic in each character that they can justify, especially for characters like Guerre, which could easily have been turned into a one-note villain. According to them, nobody is a villain for free. And so, they want to make sure we can see what people are really thinking, but can't say. They also focus on having a strong sense of parallels and necessary similarities between the character arcs. They want to have a cyclical organization, reminders of Act 1 that are in Act 2. 90% of the music is written before the lyrics. According to Schönberg, he's always trying to write in the rhythm of spoken language. The lyric will be delivered with the music at the same speed, phrasing, and structure as if it were spoken. Reprises are very important to their musical style. A reprise must be driven by the story. It must come naturally because the story must drive everything. In a sung-through musical, the lyricist is also a playwright. According to Boublil, it is the dramatic situation that is the most important thing. The music and lyrics have to tell the story right the whole way through. The words have to sing naturally. Fancy words wouldn't tell the story well. According to their co-lyricist, who worked on the English translation of Les Miserables, Homework Cutsmore, who worked from the English translation of the novel, the music, a literal translation of Elaine's lyrics, and a synopsis of the scene by scene, the words are chosen for specific characters and seek to reveal individual character as well as social background. For example, the words chosen for Cosette, young girl raised in a Christian convent, were not the words one would write for Eponine, who grew up on the streets. Clever characters get clever rhymes. The less clever get an imperfect or an unexpected rhyme. Like in Castle and Cloud, when you expect toy to rhyme with boy, but instead it rhymes with boy and girl, it is a very strong story requiring plain words because the story is the most important thing. When you write a show, you have to start working on each song with a clear awareness of its direction and function. If it advances the plot, or if it emphasizes a dramatic situation. Does it provide info or describe the character? Les Mis does a lot of soliloquy, which is directly expressing the thoughts. Find a desire that would make it worth musicalizing. Their lyrics survive because they convey with music and lyrics the emotions of any culture. As I said before, there is a strong sense of parallels between character arcs and pieces of Act 1 or in Act 2. A great example of this is Valjean's soliloquy in the prologue, where he sings, "I am reaching but I fall, and the night is closing in, and I stare into the void, to the whirlpool of my sin. I'll escape now from the world of Jean Valjean. Jean Valjean is nothing now, another story must begin." But in Act 2, during Javert's soliloquy, after everything he thought he knew has now been revealed to be wrong, he sings, "I am reaching but I fall, and the stars are black and cold," which is a callback to his song in Act 1. "As I stare into the void of a world that cannot hold. I'll escape now from the world of Jean Valjean. There is nowhere I can turn, there is no way to go on." Now those two lyrics have very similar structure. They both say, "I'm reaching but I fall." They both stare into the void. They both have a world that they must escape, the world of Jean Valjean. But while Valjean is escaping his previous life of sin and crime, Javert is escaping a world where what he once knew is not what he now believes because of this one man, Jean Valjean. And that's all told in a single reprise, draws inspiration from previous melodies.
I am reaching, but I fall, and the stars are black and closing in, as I stare into the void of a world that cannot hold. I'll escape now from that world, from the world of Jean Valjean. There is nowhere I can run. There is another story must begin.
So, for our little experiment today, I want you to write 1 to 2 lines of a character in a moment of conflict. Then, rewrite the lines for a different character or different moment, which has similar wording but different emotions. A much easier example of this is in Miss Saigon. In the end of Act 1, Kim says, "No one can stop what I must do. I swear I'd give my life for you." But in the end of Act 2, she says, "No one will stop what I can do. My son, I'll give my life for you." So with 2 small word changes, it goes from "I can do this if it's necessary" to "I will do this because it is necessary." So I will give you however long you need, because you can just pause the video to do this experiment. And that is the end of the writing exercise. I hope you enjoyed this presentation on the musical world of Boublil and Schönberg. And give yourself a round of applause because writing lyrics is hard. If you want, I will share on the next slide my interpretation of the exercise. Ta-da! Okay, have a good day.